You already have the answers. What if I told you that it actually didn't have to do with motivation, but it had more to do with mental clarity? What if I said that willpower wasn't the issue? Again, authenticity in mental clarity. What does that mean? That means understanding who you are, what you want. And as you develop and expand in that understanding, your behavior begins to align. I'm Dr. B. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner, but I often speak to myself when I'm doing these videos. I am a successful provider, a successful businesswoman. And my internal dialogue needs some checking sometimes. I'm going to talk about kind of how the past impacts you, the present, and the future in this video. But you need to know that regardless of your past, if I can do it, you can do it. I have lost 3 children and my husband to death over the course of 20 years. The first, my son Johnny died in a drowning accident. Then later, my son was diagnosed with a rare condition, had 10 years of medical trauma. He passed away. And then my daughter, and then my husband of the same disorder. So regardless of how stressful your life is, regardless of how traumatic your past, I am going to show you how to align and expand and be the best version of yourself. Be motivated, self-motivated from within. So how do we do that? I'm going to start by telling a negative story. So as I told you, I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I am well trained in cognitive behavioral approaches. I feel like I have read every self-help book known to man. And I know that positive thinking can definitely improve your mood, your health, your well-being, how you show up in the world, and maybe your future. And I say maybe because I'm going to tell you this negative story. I began this journey soon after my son Reggie got sick. So I told you my son Johnny had already passed. I was raising my other children, and my son Reggie got sick. And I tried to think positive all the time. I would call myself tragically optimistic. I truly believed that Reggie would be healed. So not only was Reggie not healed, but his sister and his father, my husband, passed away from the same disorder. And I have been trying to do this positive thinking, manifestation throughout that whole experience. So it is not magical thinking. It feels heavy when you are in the midst of pain and you are trying to be optimistic. You are trying to think positive. You are trying to manifest the best possible scenario. And as you can see from my story, what I thought the best possible scenario was that we found a cure, that we were able to heal Reggie, Maya, and my husband. So when we look at these things, when I say it's not just about motivation and willpower, it's about mental clarity. From all of my losses and the pain that I've gone through. And you can read about this in my book. I'm actually giving a free copy. Click the link below. I also have a documentary. I work with people one-to-one. But how do you actually do this? A couple things that I learned from the death of my children is that death is not the end. Death is not the worst thing that could possibly happen. And that there is so much more in this world. Now, I come from a belief system that I had an experience with God. I believe in God, and I use the word God. But if you have trouble with that word, I want you to replace it with whatever resonates with your soul. What is above us, around us? What is this universal energy? And how does it impact me? I can tell you, when I was in the midst of it, going through it, I felt like God was this puppet master allowing negative things to happen to me. There's even a story in the Bible where this man Job lost everything, and he is often praised for not turning his back on God. And there's this part of the story that God was kind of taunting Satan and allowing Satan to emotionally hurt Job. And so this was my view of God, of kind of like an ugly person just putting me through as much pain as I could tolerate to see if I still followed him. And I can tell you, lost my first son, continued to follow. Lost my second son. It was hard. And I backed away a little bit from kind of the things that were being taught in the church. But when I lost my third child, the slate was wiped clean. Now, I don't want you to have to go through that, but I can tell you what I have learned from it, because I have built up from that clean slate of the power that is in me when I am connected to God, the universe, this universal power. I love the word power. It resonates with me. I think it's part of my personality. But if power doesn't resonate with you, find what does in a true sitting with that. So when we look at this future thinking, right? When we look at, the title of this video is the motivation to go where I want to go. Well, let's talk about that past, present, and future again. We often think about, and we talk about this in psychiatry and psychology a lot, that our past is like these weights that are holding us back. Maybe, you think about it like a rope attached to your story and all the trauma that you have experienced. Or maybe not even trauma, just hardship after hardship after hardship. And you are like constantly pulling that. I learned, and I started this in the midst of, once I lost Johnny, Reggie was very sick, and I began doing what I call the mentally strong method. And this is knowing how to think through those things, how they impact my present, right? We're talking about past, present, future. And so what the mentally strong method does is it allows you to think through the present and the past and organize them. But I can tell you what is one of the most important things that I learned is the things that I needed to let go from the past. Because if the past is this weight, like constantly pulling on you, it is really hard to be excited about the future. Maybe you have past and present. Maybe right now your child is sick. Right now your husband is sick and you're the caretaker for them. And you have all of this past stuff. And so the present is heavy and the past is heavy. And so you can't even imagine the future. This is what the mentally strong method does. Helps you to think, organize, choose. And the think, organize, choose helps you with that past and present. But the last element of the mentally strong method is your personal vision. We often think that our past and our today decisions impact our present. Like that's the only thing that impacts our present. And that's kind of how we think. I saw a a speaking engagement by Ben Hardy. He's coming out with a new book. And he talked about, and he's an operational psychologist, and he talked about the future actually has more impact on the present than the past does, especially if we can get into that mindset that, future forward, right? And so he's an occupational psychologist. What that means is how someone shows up at work and productivity in this world. So business people, employees, how you show up in your career. I specialize in how you show up in the world, in your mental health space. And I've talked a lot here about those positive thinking. And when you look at what we are saying, if you look at it as a continuum, there's a hard science in psychology that what you think and believe and say out loud, this is why we talk about positive affirmations, will show up more in your life. Now you take that on the extreme, and I also, follow people like Esther Hicks, the law of attraction and Secret. And I can remember I told you that negative story about how I read those books back when Reggie was sick and I tried to manifest his healing and it didn't happen. So if you look at it from this continuum, we often think about the law of attraction and Secret, and you can, create whatever you want as bad psychology, inaccurate, not in reality. But this is actually a spectrum of mental to spiritual health. Okay? We have taken spiritual health out of mental health, with this fear of proselytizing. I don't want you to tell me to believe what you believe. And so we stopped really encouraging people to grow in their spiritual health. But when you look at this continuum of mental health psychology, we have the reticular activating system. This is your filter in your brain. If you begin thinking positive, you will, by factual science, have more positive in your life. All the way to the spiritual of people who teach about like law of attraction and anything is possible, just believe it. That is more of a spiritual expansion and happens over time. So I told you, for me, I started from scratch after my daughter passed away. And then I began to actually communicate with my daughter. And now I can communicate with my son and my husband and God and Jesus. And I have this expansion, and it is my own, right? And so my motivation, remember the title of here is motivation. My motivation is internal. I think oftentimes when we say how to motivate yourself, we're getting external feedback of what we think we should do, right? You should exercise every day. And, you probably should. But what I'm saying is if you dig deep, and why do you want to exercise? Oh, because my doctor says I want to lose weight. I should lose weight. Do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to lose weight? And for me, I realized as I went down that trail of why do I want to work out? Why do I want to lift weights? I don't actually like doing those things. They're not therapeutic for me. For some people, they're very therapeutic. But I want to be able to do adventurous, cool things when I travel. That is my motivation. I'm like this adventurous, rebellious spirit. And so my motivation to go to the gym is to show up for myself in those cool, adventurous things that I want to do, right? See how different that is than, the world thinks I need to lose weight. The world thinks I'm, fat, or, I'm over 50, so I should be lifting weights, right? Like when we think about motivation, we are often not going deep enough. So if you are having trouble finding the motivation to do something, either you don't actually want to do it, or you haven't determined your real deep why of why you want to do it. So if you know why you want to do it and you can think positive about those things, like I believe that the next time I try to go surfing, I'm going to be able to stand up on the board, right? That's positive thinking. That's what I'm trying to manifest. That's motivating me to show up and, lift some weight so that I can be stronger when I get to the ocean, right? So back to the negative story of if something's really heavy in your life right now, or your past is like really heavy in your life right now, there are two ways of looking at this motivation: survival, expansion. You may have to be in survival right now. I can tell you, I began to learn these things soon after Reggie passed away. This was in 2016. But I was still caring for Maya. I was still caring for my husband. Then Maya passes away unexpectedly, which was a huge trauma for me, right? I was still in survival mode. So even though I was trying to expand, I was also afraid. And fear is kind of the opposite of expansion. But if you are aware of that, I wish I was more aware that it is okay to expand a little bit, right? To continue to grow. I have used the word grow throughout my career. I just recently changed it to expansion, because when you think of growing, you think of like an upward motion, like I'm becoming a better person. We are good people. You are who you are. Your soul is imprinted. You are who you are. Expansion means something different. It means more aware of myself, my surroundings, and even spiritual concepts, right? Like expanding. So you may be in survival mode. And I do think the Mentally Strong method can help you. But think about trying to step into expansion. Can I begin expanding who I am? Not growing. I mean, it's great to grow and become more successful. But expanding has an eternal purpose, not just a worldly purpose. I hope these things are helpful. So let's go into some questions. First question is, what does this have to do with addiction? My mother was an addict, and although I am not addicted to drugs, I do have some more acceptable addictions. Acceptable addiction, the person didn't say, but, maybe it's food, maybe it's internet, maybe it's porn, gambling, something that can be kept a little more quiet. Addiction is multifaceted, right? So it's a learned behavior. So maybe you learned, that, this is an effective coping mechanism, right? And oftentimes it works. And this is the problem with addiction. If you are feeling anxious and depressed, and you drink and you have a good time, you've just rewarded that, right? Like it actually worked, with all substances, regardless of what their outcome is. The same is true of other addictions, food addiction. Like we know that carbs actually increase serotonin in the brain. We know that from science. You are actually giving yourself microdosing of an antidepressant. Okay? So acknowledging that it is just a coping mechanism that maybe you don't want to be doing. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why am I doing it? Go deeper. Yeah, but why? Whenever you're trying to figure out the root of something, just keep asking yourself why. But why? But why? What? But why is it so, why do I desire it so much? Why? Why? Now, from a science perspective, the longer someone has had an addiction, the negative neural pathways around that dopamine addiction become clinical, like they become an actual change in biochemistry. Okay? And its abstinence is important, right? Because you have to like break that cycle and then like rewire it. Don't beat yourself up too much, right? Again, anything that we fight, you know, they often say in manifestation circles, like what you resist persists. Whatever you fight often becomes harder to do. So addiction is just a maladaptive coping, a coping mechanism that you don't want to do. So figure out why you're doing it. Use the mentally strong method to think about how the past and the present and how your thinking is impacting that choice, but also believe that you can be free of it. I know that millions of people have been helped from the 12-step programs, but the first step is to say you're powerless, and I adamantly disagree. I want you to say that you are power, that you can and will overcome this. So it's not just, again, not just about motivation, right? It's about going deeper. But why? But why? But why? Why do I do it? And why do I not want to do it? And go deeper and deeper and deeper. Oftentimes people will say, I don't want to do it because of my children. I don't want them to see me using this or whatever. Your whys are not about somebody else. They're about yourself. So switch that narrative. Because I want to be a good mother. I want to show up in the world as strong. Like, what is your why? Because when you're doing it for someone else, and I say this all the time when someone has lost one child and they're like, yeah, but I'm keeping it together for my other children. Well, think about me. One child, then two child, then three children. And then I do have other children, but they're grown and gone, and I'm alone. If I didn't find a way to do it for me, I wouldn't be doing it. All right, on to the next question. What if I don't believe in manifestation? Whatever you believe is true, right? So manifestation is a scary word if you're very like science and fact-based, if you are in a religious belief system that says that is like not of your belief system, that's okay. You don't have to resonate with that word. Think about what I said about expansion spiritually. And what can you know? And this is between you and your God. And that can, you know, we say in the, some people use the word manifestation, some people use the word prayer, right? But everyone has an internal power. Christians call it the Holy Spirit. Buddhists talk about like a living God within you. Like the power of the universe is inside of you. I want you to find it. And my calling is to help you on that journey. To give you questions to ask yourself and to understand yourself. But I can't tell you your answers. Because your soul, right? We have this soul, knows everything. Your soul is connected to universal knowledge, energy, power. Let's tap into that. However you need to say those words. Okay, so this next question says, I don't know how you're doing it. Losing children, I would not be able to go on. I often feel like it's too much, past and present. I don't want to show up for you as the hero. I want you to see the hero within you. I struggled with depression before I had a reason to be depressed. Now I have legitimate reasons to be depressed. I'm telling you, I'm not this superwoman. I'm just like you. I've just done the work. And I've taken that pain and I said, I've got to figure this out. And now I'm sharing that with you. Don't look at me on this pedestal of somewhere you can't be, because you can. I want you to like, subscribe, follow, binge watch my content. You'll see I even have stuff of right after my daughter died and I'm a blubbering mess. My documentary shows the intensity of that pain. Watch the next video, The Purpose of Pain, and click the link for your free copy of my book.